Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 326 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, we have two very special guests for today's episode. From Space Lion Studios, we have the wonderful Mark Robinson, developer of the game Axyz, and then also returning to the show from Siactro, we have Marcus Horn, developer of Toree Saturn, Kiwi 64, and a number of other indie games. It's great to have you back, Marcus. It's great to have you as well on the show, Mark. A little round of applause.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course. Very excited to have you guys on for this kind of indie developer roundtable of sorts. Is it a roundtable with two people? I'm not sure. It's more of a line, I suppose, at that point. But we're here to talk about something that I've had in my mind for a long time, and that's just kind of this prevalence of indie spiritual successor games. We find, especially in the past 10 to 15 years, a lot of indie developers are kind of going the route of really wearing their influences on their sleeve when it comes to the kinds of games that they put out. I find that to be an awesome phenomenon. I end up buying a lot of these games, a lot of it out of nostalgia, and then you end up finding a lot of games that you really love. So we wanted to delve a little bit further into this idea of indie spiritual successors from two of the sources themselves, and talk a little bit about what that could mean for the future of gaming and how it affects the AAA industry as well. On top of that, we also have lots of news and rumors to talk about this week. There's some new Super Nintendo games added to Nintendo Switch Online, including one that uses mouse controls. There's some Pokemon news and leaks. Elon Musk says they're making an AI game. Kind of don't want to talk about that, but I guess we'll cover it and much, much more. But before we get into all that, how are you guys doing? It's great to have you on the show. How are your weeks?
Yeah, mine was okay. I just got back from London yesterday. I was back home in the motherland. So for anyone who doesn't know, I'm actually based in Ireland. We are an Irish development studio, but I'm originally from England, been in Ireland for 10 years. But I was doing an event on Saturday in the west of London. And it's always fun to go back home, even for a few days, because it means I can get to see family, get to see friends, and I can do an event as well. And if I can do it in a way where, well, because I'm very fortunate enough to come from that area, it usually means that I don't have to pay for hotels and that kind of stuff. And when you're an indie developer, you any way you can save yourself a few quid, you try and do so.
Sure thing.
But yeah, no, it's fun. I really enjoyed showcase events. I really enjoy talking to people, and I really enjoy talking to other developers at events as well. And especially now I'm on the other side of having released the game. I really enjoy talking to developers that haven't yet quite launched their first game yet, and just trying to, give whatever advice I can and just try and kind of help them get over that hurdle, because the differences between working on a game and releasing a game are quite monumental. And I want to try and get as many developers over that line as possible, because it's quite a freeing experience once you get there, until you quickly start working on the next thing. And then, it's just a perpetual cycle of 3 a.m. mornings of why the fuck am I doing this still?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can understand that. How about you, Marcus? How was your past week?
I've been to a concert on Saturday, and I got drunk.
Very good.
That's that. You know what? Much better my weekend. Much better.
Can I ask who you saw?
I saw a completely amazing, very fun power metal band called Axyz, which is not too well known, but there's whole story behind why they exist, and I don't know. I love them. I literally everything they put out is just completely up my alley of just weird nonsense, fun stuff.
Yeah.
Is there any power metal band known besides Dragon Force? I feel like that's the only one that anyone actually does know. And then I feel like power metal is quite a niche within a niche of the metal genre.
Probably. I mean, to be fully honest, I don't really know. I did make the mistake of digging into some Reddit forum posts and whatnot about power metal. That was a huge mistake, and I will just just stay away from all of this. And I just go to the concerts I enjoy. Just get the music I enjoy, and that's I'm not gonna
Metal fans are a particular breed, shall we say?
Yeah, I mean, like I guess you could argue fans in general, but it's especially with this, where the comparing is even easier. It's painful.
Yeah, like the thrash metal fans and the power metal fans and the black metal fans and the sludge metal fans, you can't put them in the same room. That's just combustible elements.
They need to do a Big Brother season where it's just all the different kinds of metal fans. I think.
For sure.
That would be a pretty good.
See, the thing is, and next year there's going to be a new album by that band, and also potentially a new album by like a black metal artist as well, which is it's like basically the complete opposite of each other, and I'm excited for both. And I cannot tell people that because they will just sacrifice me.
See, that's why we love you, Marcus. You contain multitudes, right? I think that's one of the best things about any indie developer. But yeah, I had a pretty good week as well. I was sick for a decent amount of last week. Listeners of the show will know I went and did some karaoke, and I think whenever I did that, I got some sickness from some of the people there. So that was kind of a bummer. But I was able to go out a little bit at the end of the week. I went to Patrick Knisley's Monochrome Heightz release party. We had Patrick on last week to talk about his new platformer game. And that was really great. It was good to see a lot of the old Switch heads. Patrick and Matt were there. I think, Marcus, when you were on the show before, maybe it was me, Patrick, and Matt. I don't remember exactly what the hosting setup was. But it was nice. We were all three in the same space. And that's pretty rare. So that was a fun time, and did a couple other things as well. Went to a spooky movie brunch yesterday and saw the movie House of Wax. So,
oh god,
isn't that like super old?
Oh, there is like a 1950s one, but then there's one from 2005 with Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton is in it.
Yeah, true.
I thought there was going to be a lot more Paris Hilton in the movie than there ended up being. I was actually kind of disappointed by how little Paris Hilton there is in the movie.
It is kind of like false advertising because the whole film was kind of built around the fact that Paris Hilton.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. Shanked fairly quickly.
I was a little disappointed in that, but I mean, hey, you know what? It was a silly movie, and it did not ruin Wax for me, which is really good. Little shout out to one of the inside jokes there at the party, but. I think with that out of the way, we'll get here into the news. But first, I'd like to give a couple shout outs from last week's episode. We had a lot of love on the YouTube comments, for Patrick's game. So that was really great to see. Thanks to everyone there. And then also on the Discord, Hans Gauger said, I've been crazy busy all week, but I did my part and bought Monochrome Heightz today. I'll review it when I get a chance. Great to hear. I'm sure both people on this podcast can attest to how important Steam reviews are to the long-term sales of a game. And then also AV said, hat tip to Bordan for asking about the OST of Monochrome Heightz, as I was interested in that as soon as I started playing. Can confirm that it's on streaming now, and it's all bops, no flops. So yeah. I also checked that out. The Monochrome Heightz soundtrack is on Spotify. So as long as you have not boycotted Spotify due to ethical reasons, you can go check it out over there. I'm sure you could get the soundtrack on other streaming services as well. So a couple shout outs there. Thanks to all of you for listening on last week's episode. What a fun one. If you would like to be shouted out, listener, on today's episode or next week or whenever we do shout outs, definitely drop us a line on our Discord, shoot us a message over on social media, tag us. We'd love to shout you out or leave a comment. And like and subscribe over on our YouTube. We do a video version of this podcast where we'll have video clips. We got 3 handsome men on today's episode. Who would want to miss that, right? Be sure you go subscribe over there and leave a comment. We'll try to shout you out next week. Tell a friend about the show. Leave a review over on Apple or Spotify. Share it on Reddit. All that kind of stuff. But I think with all that out of the way, let's get into the news. We got a bit to go through here, but we'll go through it pretty quick. First off, 3 new games have been added to Super Nintendo Entertainment System Nintendo Classics app on Nintendo Switch Online on the Nintendo Switch family of systems. That's a lot to say. And some of these are pretty cool. One of them is a little confounding, but I think the biggest one to talk about here is Mario and Wario. This was a Japan-only mouse-based Super Nintendo game. It's kind of like a puzzle lemmings style sort of game. I don't know if you guys have ever played that one, but that's pretty nice to see whenever they bring these Japan-only games to the North American or European Nintendo Classics apps.
Yeah, I'd never seen it before.
Mhm.
I like to pride myself on being, enough of a kind of historian to know, like, the last time something like this happened where I was like, what the hell is this? Was when they announced the Live Alive remake.
Right,
like,
yeah,
what
totally.
the hell is Live Alive? And it's cool. It's awesome to see stuff like this, and obviously the kind of utilization of the Switch 2 mouse.
Yeah,
makes sense. Why
absolutely
this thing exists.
Yeah, I really like that. I think also on Switch 1, you can play these if you just plug in a USB mouse to your dock,
nice.
I think, as well, which is really cool. But it's nice to see some of the more niche stuff being added, especially niche first-party stuff, because I feel like that's a new treat whenever anybody in the West gets that. There was also added was Fatal Fury Special for the Fatal Fury fans, and then also Bubsy in Claws Encountered of the Furred Kind, which is interesting.
Can I just barge? I just have to barge.
Absolutely, please, Mark. Yeah.
Where are we at this point in civilization with Bubsby? Because I feel like there are some people that have gone full circle in terms of Bubsy being a bit and thinking that like Bubsy was actually good and that we've retconned that into existence.
Right.
But as someone who enjoys a good 2D platformer from the early 90s, Bubsby has and always has been a bad video game. And I haven't seen anyone celebrating the kind of launch of this, but if I see one person, I'm gonna have to like sit down with them and ask what exactly is it? Because
who hurt you?
Yeah. Or did Bubsy hurt you? Because like it's like the floatiness of it is just it's uncontrollable. The kind of like distance between the sprite of Bubsby and like the background, you're so zoomed in that you can't really like people talk about Sonic the Hedgehog in that you go so fast that you kind of feel you're out of control and that you like run into spikes and blah blah blah, which is very overblown. But Bubsby is that like you just cannot see anything coming in the foreground. The level design is confusing. It makes no sense. And it's like I know I played it within the last couple of years. I just emulated it just to kind of like refresh myself. It's like, is this as bad as I remember? And no, it was worse.
So
I just
I think the really confusing thing is that obviously they've got the new Bubsy 4D coming out from the Demon Tides developer. I'm actually really really excited for that game. Big fan.
You know what? That might be the thing that actually does retcon Bubsby because Demon Tides and
But I mean, the confusing thing for me is that on top of that, Atari also released this like Perfect collection. I think it was Digital Eclipse or whoever is doing a lot of the the recent re-releases of those games. So it's like I don't know. This is just following a bit of a trend where we're seeing some of these games release in collections, but then also being added for free to the Nintendo service. I'm not really sure exactly why they're doing that, but Bubsy's having a moment, whether you like it or not. I think something that I like about Nintendo Switch Online and these Nintendo classics, like especially for these retro games, a lot of them don't really play super great in a modern setting. But I think it's nice to have them there just for like historical value, as a bit of a history lesson. So, I mean, I obviously we're talking about sort of retro inspired games in this episode, but I don't know if you guys see the value in it. Like,
I do. I mean, Switch Online is kind of a peculiar place for this sort of thing. And obviously you think about the Virtual Console and Nintendo as a whole, going back to like the Nintendo Wii and being a place for kind of like, like who the hell's playing Ice Climbers in 2009? This guy was.
All right, there we go.
Yeah. But like, you obviously the idea of like Bubsby being like a new game announced for Xbox Game Pass and then new $360 a year, like it's not going to quite kind of cut the same way. Is it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what's in that Perfect collection. I presume it has some like kind of museum pieces and artwork and blah blah blah.
Yeah, there's a little bit.
I imagine this is just a straight up like emulation of the original.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I barely play my original Switch anymore, and as an indie developer, got to make certain choices, financial and whatnot. And also because I'm much more like I have a Steam Deck and I just throw everything on there. So like kind of sitting atop my emulation mountain of like I could just go and play this for free right now. Blah, blah, blah. But not everyone's into emulation, and it's very cool that Nintendo do this kind of stuff. Even if it is for a terrible video game.
I like it. Was Bubsy a part of your past at all, Marcus?
I mean, not so much the 2D ones. Like I think I played one of them. Like I tried it out at a friend's at some point, but I have no memory of it. But Bubsy 3D is actually, it's a bit hard to explain, but like that game has like some connection to me. You know, like it took forever till I finally actually played it. And I do actually have the collection with the like the re-release collection recently.
It's like fix the camera and stuff, right?
There are two versions. There's like the historical accurate version where you have the tank controls and all that, and then you have the other version with the like more modern input and whatnot. I personally prefer the tank controls, honestly, because the game. I mean, when they made the game, they were making that game. They were designing those levels with the tank controls, like, and it's just
totally.
I mean, the flow's better anyway. Like if you're able to ignore the whole tank controls are bad thing. Which like I grew up with a Super Nintendo, early PC. Friend had a PlayStation, all that stuff. So tank controls, like sure, whatever.
Like the tank control whole like discourse is like if you don't get on board with tank controls, it's just you did not grow up with tank controls, and there's that appreciation that you just can't understand, because like games of that time were made because of we weren't quite in we were still in that sort of like 8-way. Like very digital movement space, so like tank controls were designed with that in mind. It does annoy me, but I just think that there's a generation of people that they have not grown up with tank controls. So when I played Signalis a couple of years ago, I was like, tank controls all the way, baby. This is the way to do it.
Totally,
but it's good to have like both ways.
Yeah. No, but what I think about Bubsy 3D, like especially. When I first heard about it, I think it was the AVGN video back in the day, right? I'm old.
Me too.
And when I saw like the like how the world is built and the textures and all that stuff, and how simple the 3D model was, it just kind of felt more approachable. As someone who just like wanted to make games for like forever, it just felt like, okay, like if I ever do 3D, this could be something that maybe I'm able to do, because it's very simple. Like, the whole platform is like literally just like gray block and whatnot. So Bubsy 3D has kind of like this really weird historic value for me in a way. So the what was it called? Like the first 3D platformer, Alpha Waves or something. I mean, that's even simpler. It's just like
the problem with Bubsy 3D is it came out like within the same like month or two of Mario 64.
Yeah, it was so close.
It's just like you almost feel bad for them.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll talk later in this episode, but I think like aesthetics go a really long way. I think that it's like that game feels cozy to me, like visually, and it almost like makes me want to suffer through the gameplay. But we've talked way too long about Bubsy. I think we need to move on to our next bit.
Fuck it, hour and a half. Let's go, Bubsy.
Next, I do want to talk about the very strange video that Nintendo dropped on their YouTube and on Nintendo Today over the past week, and that was the Close to You video. This was not a Carpenter's music video, which I originally thought that it would be, but rather this was like a short film with a baby and a moving pacifier, and the baby learns to walk and the mom is really happy. It looked very Pixar coded. Everybody was really confused as to what it was, but anybody with ears and a passing knowledge of the Pikmin franchise would know that it was Pikmin related, because there were some musical cues in it on the piano that were very Pikmin. The following day, Nintendo did release a video on their Nintendo Today app, which I'm not going to show here because they've been blocking videos on YouTube that put this up for some reason. But it was the same video, but with all the Pikmin that were invisible now visible in it, right? So either this is some sort of tease for a new Pikmin game that takes place alongside humans, or they're retconning it to where all the past Pikmin games had humans, you just couldn't see them, or vice versa. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but either way, Nintendo has come out and said that these are the first short films created by Nintendo Pictures Co. Limited. So either they're promotional short films or they're just short films for the sake of short films. But this is kind of the fruits of the labor of Nintendo buying those companies, production companies that were putting together a lot of the Pikmin shorts before and bringing them in house. Did you guys have a chance to check out these Close to You shorts, either versions of them? And are you guys Pikmin fans?
I really kind of do like Pikmin as a concept and as characters. I haven't really played most of the games except for the mobile one, Pikmin Bloom.
Pikmin Go, yeah, or Pikmin Bloom, yeah.
And I did enjoy that. That was kind of fun, but no, I haven't seen like the video itself. I just saw like the Discord on everywhere basically, where people were like literally getting at each other's throat if it's Pikmin related or not. Like
people thought it was Baby Rosalina for a while.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
It's Pikmin. It's Pikmin.
But the thing I want to know is if Shigeru Miyamoto was somehow involved in this, because it's known that he really loves Pikmin, and now that he's more focused on the whole movie thing, it just it kind of feels like he might have had a say in this.
Probably, if it kind of feels like
right,
like him a little bit. Yeah. And they hide Pikmin all over the parks and everything. Like Pikmin, I feel like is kind of like the cross like franchise characters that kind of show up in everything as little Easter eggs or whatever. But yeah, what about you, Mark? Did you see these?
Yeah, I did. I was curious if Illumination were involved in the production of this. So it's very, very cute.
I don't think so. I think it was their internal animation.
It was their internal.
Yeah.
But the thing that intrigued me about it is that as you mentioned, like if it's taking place inside a house, a kind of like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids style sort of like adventure inside the house, which is very like speaking of like spiritual successors, Tinykin from a couple of years ago is very much a kind of Pikmin coded style type of game, and Tinykin is wonderful.
Yeah.
If anyone hasn't played it, I don't know if it's on Game Pass anymore. I'm pretty sure it's under like 20 quid. I think Tinykin actually does quite a few things better than Pikmin, because I've always enjoyed Pikmin conceptually more than actually the act of playing it. Like I did play a bunch of like the first one and the third one, but I've never finished a Pikmin game. I just feel like I kind of get to a point where it's like I've had my fill with these. Where Tinykin kind of did it in a way where it kind of kept you engaged for much longer, and the way it approaches it is a little bit different as well. So I'm curious if it is doing a like an in-house sort of thing, if there is any kind of like inspiration from Tinykin for it, or is purely coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, I was feeling almost like some Chibi Robo influence. I was like, if this is a tease for a game, I think a Pikmin game that it kind of has elements of Chibi Robo, where there is giant people walking around as you're doing these kind of Pikmin things. I feel like that'd be a pretty cool like mashup of those two styles of games, right? So,
because
I'd like it to be a game eventually,
Yeah, I mean, because I do feel like, between Pikmin 1, 2, and 3, kind of like thematically, tonally, and environmentally, like a lot of it's kind of crosses over quite a bit. Like it's kind of hard to like pass one from the other. So it does kind of feel like it'd be good to take it in something of a new direction.
Yeah.
Still obviously using the kind of core mechanics and whatnot, but just kind of mixing up a lot more of the environmental aspects of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think Pikmin could use a little shakeup, but I mean, obviously, whatever is happening, Nintendo is still all in on Pikmin. I think, I know the new Nintendo of America president is a huge Pikmin fan. Obviously, it's Miyamoto's like, kind of favorite series, it seems like. So we'll be seeing a lot more of Pikmin, whether it's in film form or maybe it's a series or these shorts or whatever. But I think it's exciting to see for those fans. But we'll go ahead and move on to a little bit of Pokemon news. And there are a couple things here. First is that Pokemon Legends ZA comes out next week. And a little bit of a PSA here. The game has apparently leaked in almost its entirety. So the game's being data mined. There are spoilers everywhere. So if you're spoiler conscious and you don't want to be spoiled, definitely now is maybe the time to start muting words on social media so you don't get anything spoiled for you. ZA looks like it's going to be a pretty interesting game. I'm not sure how excited I am for it, but I think I'll be trying it out next week so we can talk about it on the episode. And then on top of that, there was also a little bit of Pokemon Gen 10 leaks. If you don't want to be spoiled on any of this is just a rumor, but it might be true. Maybe skip forward a couple minutes here. But apparently, the next Pokemon Generation 10 games are going to be called Pokemon Waves and Pokemon Wind. So that is kind of interesting. This comes from Centro Leaks, who has gotten a lot of Pokemon leaks right in the past. Apparently, it's got an Indonesian or like South Asian setting, and the theme is infinity, whatever that means. I'm not exactly sure. There was a lot more to break open in the article I was reading about this. Apparently, there was a lot of stuff kind of leaked in one of these documents that came out. But that's exciting to at least know what the next Pokemon Gen is going to be called. I am kind of a lapsed Pokemon fan, if I'm honest. You know, I was way into it as a kid. I obviously keep up with all the news and everything like that that's coming out, but I'm certainly no expert on it. Are either of you excited for Legend ZA this week? Or?
I'm kind of similar to where you are,
Right.
where like the last Pokemon mainline game kind of really burned me. Like,
Yeah,
I know
rough.
obviously the kind of like you look over the past, really since Pokemon went into like the 3D space, it's kind of astounding the lack of polish that those games sometimes have for how financially successful and lucrative that series is.
Sure.
In every capacity of that series. And I, you know, look, I'm not by any means any kind of like fidelity or graphics whore. Like, you know, like a game can be a bit janky around the edges. I am a proponent of like janky games, and janky visuals can add to the charm of a game.
Sure.
But when I'm in a classroom of a Pokemon game, and I'm pretty sure there's about 12 different frame rates going on depending on which part of the scene I'm looking at, and I'm looking at the most violent texture clipping and popping of this rock formation that I've seen in some time, I'm just like, we could have just given this 6 months of more polish,
Yeah.
surely.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, the biggest problem that Pokemon has at this point is just there's so many of them. And, you know, like, look, I swear by Pokemon Silver as one of my favorite games of all time. I remember Christmas of 98, like getting a Game Boy Color and a copy of Pokemon Silver and rinsing through the pack of AA batteries I was given with it. You know, like I absolutely adore Pokemon, but it is kind of also as well as like, we're at the point now where they're having to selectively choose like which Pokemon just simply aren't in this game because there's too many. And I completely understand like having over 1,000 Pokemon that you have to rig, animate, contextualize for every move, how they all like the meta game of Pokemon in itself is a whole other game. And it's kind of, you're at the point now where it's like it, like stuff like the Arceus game they did, I think was a really interesting way of kind of pivoting off to something else.
Yeah, that's my favorite game they've done in a long time.
And it kind of feels like at this point, you know, you're still probably going to get a mainline game every now and again, but more of the offshoot stuff. Like, come on, we're doing another Pokemon Stadium game at this point. Surely, come on, where's the third one?
Well, we've got a similar game coming out. I don't know if it's Pokemon Masters or no, it's not that. There's one coming out that is like just battling. I know that you can like.
I want my mini games again. All right, I miss my goddamn.
Those are on
mini-games.
NSO at least, but we'll have to see. I'm very excited to see what the reviews are going to be like for Legend ZA because it seems like it could go either way. Like I heard they were doing another Legends game, I was like, great, I loved Arceus, and then this looks totally different from Arceus. So we'll just have to see how it goes. But anyway, we're going to move on. And the next bit of news is about XAI. Apparently, Elon Musk's Grok-based AI studio is making a video game, according to him. He put out a video that, you know, had a lot of AI slop looking stuff in it.
Surprising.
It's not surprising at all. Apparently also Grok AI is now making like just full on porn videos for anybody that wants to see them. So
really?
Yeah, a little bit of a PSA there, I suppose. They got to get some of this LLM generative AI stuff in check. But apparently by the end of next year, there will be their first AI generated game. You know, I'm pretty anti this sort of stuff. I'm sure as game creators, you guys have opinions on this. Do you guys have any thoughts on the future of AI generated games? We don't have to spend too long on this.
Yeah, again, that'd be a whole other podcast.
Yeah. It's one we've been putting off talking about for a while.
I'm presuming this is just done as like some sort of thing to keep. I'm presuming X, the brand, is a public entity. I'm presuming somewhere involved, this is just a thing to keep shareholders who are all kind of collectively realizing the amount of money that they've burned. Like, for anyone who has any interest in this in terms of like the kind of speculative bubble that is going to collapse, there's a great journalist, Ed Zitron, that I would highly recommend just reading any of his blog posts or podcasts about this. But this whole thing is going to collapse in itself. And unfortunately, probably tank your economy. Sorry to tell you this, but it's like,
well, I think it's gonna be a global problem. It's not. Yeah, I mean, like we're definitely going down, but it's like,
yeah, and you're gonna take us all with you.
Exactly. As we often do. Yeah.
But yeah, look, it doesn't. Whatever it is, it's going to be god awful and barely playable. And I think back to, I think was it last year when Microsoft showed their kind of Gen AI rehash of Quake 2,
right?
And it was just like, you could have just given 4 fucking junior devs a weekend and they would have made a better rendition of Quake 2 than this.
Yeah.
What the fuck are we doing?
And we would have had one more rainforest than we currently have.
Well, there's that as well.
Yeah, but I don't know. Marcus, is this scary for you? Are you worried about this going forward?
No, I mean, like, other than the obvious problems with AI and with what the whole AI image shit does to the industry, and like me personally, I'm not worried at all.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's AI.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting better and better every day, obviously, to a point where it is pretty worrying. Like the new Sora stuff is like, it's like, damn, that's like kind of scary, especially as someone who, makes like TV and works in animation and whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, you are right, Mark, in that it is obviously a bubble, and there is like no way that this is not going to like end catastrophically. And I think that it is just people love throwing buzzwords around. Like we just got actually an email the other day from somebody being like, I'd love to be a guest on your podcast. And it was like, I work in the medical industry using AI to do blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, why are you even emailing me? Like, ma'am, this is a Nintendo podcast. I don't, you know what I mean? It's like, people just love to just send this shit out into the ether and hope somebody bites.
And the things as well is like, there are like elements and aspects of where this whole AI thing can be used for good. And actually, like the medical industry, like they've apparently been able to locate and spot I think it's early signs of cancer or something else by using AI, and it's cool, good, that's great, because obviously that's also probably being trained on models that aren't wholesale stealing from artists,
right?
So there's like places like that where cool, yeah, that's great, but I'll just the I don't know the exact number what it relates to, but like the overall amount of like profit that is being generated from this to offset the amount being spent, it's about like 5%. And it's like the amount of rainforest that we are burning through and data center. And I mean, one of the kind of positive things from this, heartening things to see, is like you're seeing wholesale like small communities in America that are rejecting these data centers that are like trying to be built on in very like rural areas.
Yeah, soaking up all the water and everything.
Yeah, and like and it's like farmers and it's their livelihood. And obviously they might not be as kind of in tune to what AI is and does, but the one thing they do know is that it is incredibly destructive to their local environment and livelihoods. And that's very much a bipartisan thing where it's like, if my livelihood is taken from me, I'm kind of fucked. So like it's positive to see from that, but at the same time, and I'm not going to turn this into a whole socialist podcast rant.
That's okay. We've already turned into a hard leftist podcast.
But like it speaks to the whole kind of wealth inequality and the rich trying to get rich off the back of the talent of artists. And,
it's not looking super positive going forward, but hopefully this thing falls on its face and it causes an example for the rest of the industry.
It's not if, it is when.
Yeah. Okay. Hell yeah.
I'm pretty.
That's the power of positive thinking. I like to hear, Mark.
There you go.
There has been some ominous news coming out of 343 Industries, the Halo developers. One of the art directors have left Microsoft and has a message, a very ominous message that he said that says, I know the state of our industry seems dire, but never forget that you are free to choose. No illusion of security nor promise of wealth or fame or power is worth trading away your health, your dignity, your ethics or values. And no one can force you to. Stay strong, take evidence when necessary, and find where you belong. Ooh, spooky. But I mean, this is also very true. I mean, it seems like a lot of big AAA studios are as we've just kind of talked about with this last story, kind of kowtowing to the most recent trends, obviously laying off tons of developers. I think that the state of AAA gaming right now is very, very intense, and it seems like a lot of people are trying to get out while they still can. I don't really know what the future of AAA in gaming is right now. Obviously, you guys are indie developers, so it's obviously a different kind of part of the gaming sphere, but it does seem that next year he's going to share more, maybe when his NDA releases. But I know Microsoft is having a really tough time right now, hardware wise and software wise. Obviously, price of Game Pass and all the systems have gone up. But are you guys concerned about this? Are you worried about the state of AAA? Is this a good thing for indie devs at the moment? Like, you guys have any thoughts on this news?
I kind of feel that it probably has something to do with the last topic, more or less. At least it kind of sounds like it. At least in parts. I mean, other parts of what he said, maybe not so much. But I mean, the Halo company is owned by Microsoft, right? Like it's kind of not really surprising.
Right. Exactly.
Stuff going on.
But also like Halo, like as you think about what Halo was in 2001 to what it is in 2025, and the kind of mishandling of that IP, and the wider conversation about like what Xbox is. Nextlander were having a good talk about this on their last podcast, and it's like talking about like the AAA space at the start of this console generation and like what it will look like at the end of this console generation. And maybe it's just because I'm getting older and my kind of perspective or sense of like how time works is completely broken at this point. But the idea that we are talking about the PS6 and whatever the next Xbox thing is, and it's like we're 5-6 years into like those two consoles, and I think specifically with my PlayStation, which the last time I turned that on was to watch the Twilight box set last Christmas. Not my choice, by the way.
Okay.
And it's
okay. And no judgment here.
No. I just want to make sure that's very much out there. But it's just like you think about like what games have we had for the last couple of years, kind of like AAA wise. I mean, it's such a trickle, and there's a number of reasons for them. We don't have to get into that,
right? Well, I feel like they've opted for making like 5 or 6 big like $150 million games instead of that many more like 20, 30, $50 million games.
But the problem is they don't have the install base and the consumers, because we're going through a cost of living crisis where like, who the fuck wants to spend 80, 90, 100 quid on a game? Like, it's going to be fewer and fewer people.
Yeah.
And on top of that as well, Microsoft kind of breaking the industry in some ways with Game Pass. And then this is an issue that we as indie devs have as well, about like how we kind of like correctly evaluate how much our games cost. And there was the whole thing with the Silksong discourse as well. And it's just, it's tough, but really just at the end of it, like, people don't have money, and we're being priced out of being able to enjoy this thing that we like, which is kind of good in a way for indie developers, obviously, because if you look at stuff like Megabonk that just came out and sold a stupid amount of copies, or Clover Pit, and there are opportunities for indie devs, but it's about how the industry kind of shifts to correctly like identify that. But then there's an issue there about like games journalism and how that still doesn't get the clicks if it's doing indie stuff, and so everything is still obviously kind of focused on like AAA, and it's just there's a reset that's to happen, but it's just not gonna.
I think the thing that is most concerning for me about the kind of drying up, or like say the AAA bubble bursting, if we're talking about more bursting bubbles, I'd love to one day do a episode not about bubbles bursting on this podcast, but I think the real concern there is, obviously indie is great, but indie, it's hard to break through, the deluge of indie titles, I mean, I feel like both of you have in your own ways, which is really fabulous. But I think it's, it's also, you don't want to have a games industry where there isn't like a working class game developer that can like get jobs in the industry. You know what I mean? It's like, indie is wonderful if you have the means, but then it's like, I think having those kind of base level games industry jobs are like super, super important.
Yeah. Like the junior positions just don't exist. Like I obviously it's tough for us, and hey, like I'm very proud of Axyz and what it did, but it's not exactly like making the kind of money that I can be self-sufficient on.
Right.
But at least I've, branched out to my own thing, and maybe I can use that to offshoot into a job somewhere else. But like, if you're coming out of college or university, those junior positions they're just not there. And yeah, I mean that's a whole bigger kind of topic for another day.
As all of these news topics often are. We'll get into our last little bit of news here. Speaking about Microsoft, a Minecraft 2 movie has a release date set. Turns out that Minecraft movie was incredibly popular, very successful for Warner Brothers and Microsoft. And the new movie has been announced. Jared Hess, the director, will be returning, and that's going to be releasing 7/23/27. You guys see the Minecraft movie? I didn't end up saying no. We're getting chicken heads on all of this. Either way, I know Chicken Jockey was hugely successful. I know theater workers were very pissed off having to clean all the popcorn off the floor. I'm sure this will be another big phenomenon whenever it releases.
I'm very happy for the kids that enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then lastly, we did have... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or kids at heart, maybe, But lastly, we'll talk another little bit of Nintendo Switch Online news, and this kind of ties a little bit into our main topic here, and that is that Nintendo has patented a game mechanic here, which I have opinions on whether or not that should even be allowed. But this seems to be involving the Nintendo Online playtest program, that kind of mysterious MMO that they were playtesting. You had to have an invite in order to play on NSO. This involves, picking up multiple blocks at once by walking around, a group of blocks. The game, you're not supposed to talk about it, but it was a Minecraft-esque kind of builder sort of thing, kind of utilizing voxel technology, which they obviously ended up using in Donkey Kong Bonanza, and it seems like the new Pokopia might have been somewhat involved. It's the new Pokemon Life Sim game in some of what they were doing with this playtest, but they do have this new patent out, and I just wanted to bring this up just to kind of get the feel in the room of patenting game mechanics. I think that is a bit troublesome. I'm not really sure exactly what the end game is here, but we have known Nintendo to be somewhat litigious when it comes to something like, say, Pocket Pair's Pal World with some of the game mechanics that they've done. Is this concern you guys at all, or what do you think about this playtest? Do you guys have any thoughts on this? Mark, what do you think about this?
I mean, you mentioned the Pal World, the collecting of monsters or whatever the hell that pattern was from a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
And my original thought was, and I put a Blue Sky post out about it at the time, was this is literally just there as a kind of self-defense mechanism against Pal World.
Exclusively for that game.
and not something they could actually put into practice, because they literally have monster collection style games like a Cassette Beast, for example, on their platform.
Right.
So it's this is as litigious as they are, which you are correct to point out. You think back to the Nemesis system and the potential for games that it could have taken that system and done some really interesting stuff with it, instead of whatever the fuck that sequel was that kind of was a half-baked mess, and then that pattern's just kind of sitting there. And one of the beautiful things, and this goes to art as a whole, is that you can take something and then iterate on it and then make something even more interesting out of it.
Absolutely.
I really like Nirvana, but Nirvana are just the best parts of the Beatles, Pixies, and 40 other bands from the kind of late 80s. It's that's just what art is, and then we'll talk about this when we get to our games and stuff, but our games are just kind of inspirations and iterations of things that came from previously. And so, I mean, I guess it will just come down to when they actually put this into practice in terms of hitting another company with a lawsuit for it, then it's all right. Okay.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like they're setting up pieces on a chessboard, sort of defensively. If they ever need to use them. But I do get a little afraid of the.
I just wonder how much in general Pal World has spooked them, that because again, there've been monster collection critter games over the years, but there was nothing that was as what's the kind way of saying as fucking deliberate in terms of its inspiration in the way.
And
that
it
some of
just
those
had
power worlds-
AK-47s in it, which I'm sure they did.
and AK-47s
Yeah,
and the Breath of the Wild font for like the title.
Right? Yeah,
Wild.
exactly.
You know, brazen is the word that I'll go with.
Sure.
And so it, you know, you do feel like maybe Nintendo have taken that on board and now are going so far in the opposite direction in terms of like being on the defensive in a way that still is their right to do, but also kind of feels like, all right, you're going a little bit too far now. But it does come down to when they actually do decide to actually put this into action. So,
you have any thoughts on this, Marcus?
I mean, first of all, you were talking about the Nemesis system, Mark. You mean like from the Lord of the Rings games?
Yes.
Yeah, Shadow of Mordor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They patterned that?
Yeah.
I didn't know. I really liked the idea, and back in the day, I wanted to make a game that had, you know, something like that. So
yeah, I think a lot of developers wanted to do that.
I mean, you probably can. It's like there is no real legal precedent for stopping people from doing this stuff. But I think that's what started this whole trend of patenting game mechanics, right?
Okay. Yeah, like, I mean, other than that, it's a bit, I was thinking about that from like the other direction. Like, for example, you're like an indie dev and you have this really great idea for, you know, I don't know, putting blocks in to create a world out of blocks or whatever, and then you pattern that because it's an amazing idea so nobody can steal it. But that's also kind of, you know, like it's just, no matter from what angle you look at it, it just doesn't really make sense. Because I never played Minecraft until like, you know, years later with a friend. What I did play was one of the many clones on
Right.
the Xbox Live indie thing. I think it was called Castle Miner. It was literally the same thing. It was Minecraft, but it had guns. Like, you literally start with like some generic gun model, and you can just shoot zombies that run at you.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun that eventually I ended up trying out Minecraft with a friend because, you know, I liked the ripoff, so why not? You know, so I don't know how much like design and wise and getting people to actually play the games wise, it makes even sense to, like, you know, block this off with a pattern.
Yeah.
Patterned.
No, I think that's a really good point. I think that I think consumers are a bit more intelligent than the patent trolls here think that we are. You know, I think that a lot of times it's like, you know, people know where the inspirations come from, and I don't think that ever stops someone from going back and playing the original game, right? And I think, if anything, having someone be able to iterate on your idea then makes the original IP holder be like, oh shit, that's a great idea. I should incorporate that back into my game and make it even better, right?
Steal it back.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I think that's just kind of how creativity works, and I think it's important that we preserve that going forward. But with all that out of the way, I think that was a good bit of news. We're going to move on to our main topic here, which is talking all about indie spiritual successors to games. We'll be getting into all of that right after this break. And we are back here with Marcus Horn and Mark Robinson, indie developers of Toree Saturn and Axyz. And we are going to talk all about indie spiritual successors. Both of you have made games that are very nostalgia based. You know, I think very much pull from a lot of these old games that we used to love when we were kids. Obviously, you know, I think one of the most obvious versions of that with you, Marcus, would be Super Kiwi 64. Really gets that kind of collectathon Banjo-Kazooie style right up there at the forefront of both the aesthetics and the game design. And then with you, Mark, you know, Axyz is a pretty obvious throwback to Kula World, early PlayStation 1 puzzle platformer sort of 3D game that was very remembered for, you know, it being on like early demo discs and whatnot. I think most people probably played it in that aspect. But, you know, I wanted to talk to both of you today because I'm always never really sure when I'm interviewing developers, like, how much do I talk about the inspiration of the games? Like, is it like kind of like an open secret? Is it something that you wear on your sleeve? Or are you always trying to kind of like show off your games a little bit more, like from their own merits of what you bring to the table in the current day, right? So these are kind of just discussions that I wanted to have with developers on the show. So thank you guys both for coming. Maybe we can start with a little bit of an introduction of yourselves and some of your games. Marcus, I know we've had you on the show before, but would you mind talking just a little bit about some of your games, Toree Saturn being the newest?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, Toree Saturn is my newest, is a speedy 3D platformer that tries very hard to be Sonic Adventure. But I also, like you said, made Super Kiwi 64, which tries very hard to be not so much necessary Banjo-Kazooie, but like definitely, Rareware inspired. And
yeah. I know with you've done now games that kind of have like 64 in the title, MacBat 64, Super Kiwi 64, and here you've got Toree Saturn, which is kind of definitely, like you said, a Sonic Adventure 2 style game, but draws a lot of visual identity from that kind of Sega Saturn era. Am I accurate in my assessment there?
Yes, but that's actually a funny story because I was actually aiming for Dreamcast look.
Oh, really?
I sucked. Like I was too bad at it, so it ended up looking again like PlayStation Saturn. I was like,
yeah,
might as well
play to your strengths.
Yeah. Well, the Toree Saturn rolls off the tongue regardless. Very fun game, by the way. I really enjoyed both of y'all's games that we'll be talking about today. Really great soundtrack as well on the when you were talking about the power metal that you were seeing earlier. I was like, oh yeah, there's some good stuff of that in the Toree Saturn soundtrack. But what about you, Mark? You're from Spaceline Studios and you put out your game Axyz. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Axyz is a fairly obvious kind of love letter to Cooler World / Rollaway in North America. Like everyone else, I had my PS1 demo disc back in the day that had Cooler World on it and was just fascinated by the 10 levels or so that thing had. And then was just a thing that I just, didn't get to kind of experience properly until years later with emulation and that kind of stuff. And the thing that was amazing about it, was going around showing it, thinking that I had this very, very niche thing that very few people would know about. And then every single fucker I meet would there was this game of a beach ball that I had on a demo disc on PlayStation. I was like, all right, so it wasn't just me then. Okay, great.
Right.
But yeah, it was, honestly, a lot of us making that game, because there's two of us, and was very much the I wanted to make a spiritual successor to Cooler World, but it was also a lot of we'd worked on a prototype for about 6 months prior, and quickly realized that what we thought was a small scope for a game was actually not, and would require more people and money that we didn't have. And so it was a very quick going back to the drawing board of okay, what is something that because I wanted to make a game. Start a studio and make a game in about 18 months and get that first game kind of done, but still, be polished and feel like a proper game. And I was like, what can we do as two people? One who's a very, very talented programmer, and me who can do a lot of things badly, but at least gives it a go. And Axyz just kind of made sense because, the level design is very modular because it's just blocks. And because we went with the Vaporwave aesthetic, Vaporwave is a very kind of like metal, really. Vaporwave can be many, many things. And the thing about Vaporwave is you can do a lot of janky stuff with it and pass it off as just being Vaporwave. And I got a little bit better as I got down the line with it. So it became also this thing of we didn't have to worry about animation. We didn't have to worry about AI and pathfinding, which was a big headache we was having with other prototype. And it just became this thing that we can play to our strengths with this and make something in 18 months that, could be a 4 to 5 hour game, which I accidentally turned into a 15-hour game when I was looking at some of the playtime sessions with the Steam reviews.
Well, puzzle games where you're beating your head against the wall sometimes, it's that is entirely dependent on the intelligence of the user, right?
But half of the game's development was just a snapshot of us knowing what our strengths and weaknesses were and making a game that fit around that. And that, extends to the next game that we're working on now is also there will be a bit of animation, but it's going to be done in tasteful kind of measured ways that isn't going to require an actual animator,
Sure. Yeah. No, I love that. And I love that you brought up the aesthetics of these games, both of you. Insofar as your inspirations are concerned, I feel like you guys have taken somewhat similar and different approaches, right? Mark with Axyz, I think that actually but before I even really understood what kind of game that it was a take on Cooler World, which I, also was familiar with and was a fan of that game already. But before I even realized that, I think the thing that drew me into it was the aesthetic, right? It was like the kind of, a bit of like a jungle drum and bass soundtrack. You had the kind of, the vaporwave aesthetic. I think the trailer, you have this sort of like call now to purchase Axyz, sort of like, like I love that whole look of it. And so I think like having that be its own sort of thing, and then using the mechanics from this other game that already existed, I think is one really cool approach to this. Where Marcus, with you, I feel like a lot of what I was getting from your games originally was aesthetic, like, oh, this is drawing me in from the nostalgia and the kind of look of these games. It's like, oh, this very much like the drop dash and the homing from Sonic and the kind of like open world N64 aesthetic from Super Kiwi 64. Those drew me in visually in that way, but then the kind of gameplay has its own sort of inspirations and has its own sort of uniqueness as well, especially with the Toree series. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that. Like when you're first like kind of draw people in, like why did you pick the approaches that you guys went with? Maybe Mark, we'll start with you with Axyz. Like, was it important for you to have your own visual identity to separate from Cooler World when doing this game?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like there are a lot of, and I know there's actually kind of the next question really in terms of like what the difference between a spiritual successor and a fan game.
Right.
And there's a lot of Cooler World style fan games where there's like, this is what Cooler World looks like in Unreal 4. And this is like a kind of like map editor Cooler World sort of thing, which are great and they're awesome. And I love that those things exist. But I was just like, let's just do a full on. And part of it is like, over the last like 5-10 years, and you have a list of examples of like spiritual successors, whether it be something like Bug Fables doing Paper Mario, whether it's Exodiac doing, Star Fox. And there was just a real like, you can take a kind of concept and take it and kind of apply it to like a sort of like modern aesthetic. Although I will be quite honest, like, my original intention is I was going to have it look more like a kind of PS1 looking chunky polygon vaporwave game, but I'm not talented enough to make PS1 style looking graphics. It's actually easier just to make it look like a kind of modern style looking game.
So you guys are more similar than you think, maybe, is what you're saying. Yeah.
No. I think Marcus is more talented than me. But like with the vaporwave thing, I mean, that kind of just evolved over time. Like I had a kind of an idea in my mind, and a lot of it actually came from, I have a friend of mine, also a developer, Jamie, who made a game called Vaporwave Pinball, that he announced like a gameplay trailer for very, very early on. And I looked at that and I was like, yeah, fuck, cool, Vaporwave, that actually could work really well with like Axyz. And so I messaged like, hey, could you mock me up like some kind of basic like blocks and a ball that could like, set the tone for what the rest of this game could be. And like that ball, the design of the ball is like his first draft. And I went, that's it. Doesn't need to be anything more than that. And then the rest of the game kind of worked it around that as I brought like another artist on board and as I got a little bit more kind of talented, but just a bit more skilled. And then from there added in like some of the kind of Y2K elements, the Windows 95 elements, and it just evolved over time. But at the start, there wasn't really a game design document with like, I want to tick off all of these things. It was just like whatever kind of like works and kind of gets thrown in there. So like, which again, I think you can kind of do that with Vaporwave and get away with it.
Yeah, Marcus, what about you? I know we were talking here about kind of like the crunchy PS1, N64 aesthetic. I feel like, for a long time that kind of the 2D pixel art platformer was kind of king of the aesthetics in the indie sphere. And I feel like now we're very much kind of entering this era of like, that next gen up, right? How important is that to you, just for getting eyes on your game, getting graphic styles like that?
I mean, it probably kind of was partly in the beginning. I mean, with kind of, depending on what you would count like the first game in my journey, so to speak. I would argue really it was Toree 3D. I mean, I made MacBat before that, but that was just because I really wanted to make it. But with Toree, I was actually aiming for this specific art style and look to get to the people who really like this, this art style, who really miss this art style. And I was also when I was working on Mac back in the day, there was always on social media always like some more colorful, more Mega Man Legends looking games that got like 10 times more likes and whatnot. And I just when I came up with the idea for Toree, I was just like, I want to have that too. I want to get more likes too.
Yeah, I mean, Toree being so colorful definitely drew me in.
Yeah. And also, it's so much easier when it's like all bright and colorful, because things just make way more sense, way faster somehow. Also, when it's like pixelated, like which with a PlayStation thing obviously is. But generally speaking, it's not really that important. Like Toree 3D was literally only a game where it was important in terms of I don't know, getting the word out and whatnot. But usually it's just like really what I feel like and what I want to do. And I mean, N64, PlayStation, early Windows games, that was big part of my childhood and teenage years. So it's just really nostalgia.
I think a lot of it, because I've often thought about this over the last couple of years with this kind of PS1, N64, now bleeding into kind of PS2 Dreamcast revival, is that you had the aforementioned like pixel art revival of the early 2010s, kind of mid 2010s.
Right.
And I think a lot of it is just purely that the indie devs in their late 30s, early 40s from the 2010 period are now the indie devs of who would have grown up playing like the games of the late 80s and early 90s. And now we are those indie devs that grew up. I did play those games as well, but like my kind of proper kind of core focus when I was 7, 8, or 9 was PlayStation 1 and N64, and is where I get most of like the warm, funny feelings when I see that PlayStation 1 boot up menu kind of blast out. So I think a lot of it is that, and then just the kind of, video games have never been more accessible and easier to jump into and just start making stuff with just Blender and Unity. There's so much you can do with that. And so I think a lot of it is just that, like the reason, because you think about the something like Super Meat Boy and Binding of Isaac.
Sure.
From the early 2010s. Like Edmund McMillan, I'm pretty sure is a good kind of 10, 15 years older than me at least. And he would have grown up obviously with Legend of Zelda and the Mario series, games. Which those two are as indebted to those as you can get. So it makes sense. Now, obviously, like his graphical style is a little bit different, but the core ideas and themes are from that generation, where the core ideas and themes of the games that I'm making are from like the next generation, and it's purely just an age thing. I do think that plays a lot. That, and also I think that there is I don't know if like anti-art is the word or the phrase to use, but I think because we've gone as like far as we can with like AAA visual fidelity, I think that and like there's no room to allow for like the imagination that you can get playing Spyro the Dragon or Medieval, where you get to like make the notes in between the song. I think there's also something to be said that it's far more for me visually rewarding to play something that just has a little bit of that. Like when I played Crow Country last year, I'm just like, I'm so glad this looks like a Final Fantasy VII chunky model game doing a Resident Evil thing. Like that's such a cool idea. And I think there's just something to that with like, there's so much room to do interesting stuff in that kind of visual style with like kind of like some simple mechanics that will never be done as a AAA game for a myriad of reasons. Right.
Well,
and that's really exciting.
I think for me too. I think you bring up a really good point there with the aesthetics, and that's that. Back in the day, obviously, the games had those aesthetics because of hardware limitations. Like that's where we were with technology at the time. Like that was the cutting edge, right? And then, but also alongside the hardware limited visuals that we also got really kind of early gameplay. It was like games were limited as well in how they could play, and I feel like it's kind of hard to go back to a lot of those early games now because we've had decades of innovation in game design and smoothing out gameplay experiences, quality of life, and all that kind of stuff that now in retrospect I feel like game developers are able to go back to that, visual aesthetic as a visual aesthetic and not as a limitation, right? So it's kind of like this idea of like, oh, it's kind of pointless when good movies get remakes. You know, it's like they should almost like remake bad movies, so we have like an opportunity to like make them better, right? And I think a lot of times, you know, it's like games like Axyz or Super Kiwi 64 or Toree Saturn or anything like that, or any of these other games that we have on this list, you know, are opportunities to kind of like revisit that style in the way that you kind of remember playing the game and not in the way that you actually were playing the game, because it all runs at like a solid 60 FPS now instead of like a slideshow or whatever, right?
But it's not just the visual limitations that can be interesting, it's the mechanical limitations as well. I think what's really interesting is the Silent Hill 2 remake from last year. Because like Silent Hill 2, that original game, part of what makes that game what it is both the limitations of being like an early PS2 game, and also the mechanical limitations, which is, you know, kind of entrenched in what survival horror is by taking things away from the player, because it, you know, makes you feel like a powerless actual human being. But like that original Silent Hill 2 game has such a dream, like slightly off kilter like tone to it, which is partly because obviously, you know, the dialogue that is spoken, it's not quite as polished and perfect as like the voice acting that you get in 2025. There's all of like the kind of motion blurring that you get, and it feels like you're in a dream, and you can't do but that only works because of the limitations of when the game was made.
Sure.
So like the Silent Hill 2 remake, and the thing I was so curious about is how much it would try to kind of match that tone and how much it would try to do its own thing. And I kind of think it goes a little bit in the middle.
Yeah, I agree.
But I still do think the over-shoulder mechanics like kind of take away from what it's meant to be. But you just kind of have to treat it as its own thing. And I think that is a really interesting case study about like kind of old school style game design and visual design and like modern kind of, because it's the same, well, it's not the same game, but it's meant to be the same game. I mean, but it feels quite different.
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Bubsy in a way too. It's like, you know, when I played the new Lara Croft Tomb Raider collection, like they have like modern non-tank controls that you can do in it. But then again, it's like the game was designed around like choosing your angles correctly, deciding how far you want to jump and everything like that. So I think there is
that
value.
Tomb Raider is a puzzle game. It's not a platformer. It's a puzzle game that has platforming.
Yeah. And it's I think that a lot of these indie spiritual successors, I think that's a great point that we can jump into now, is not just, you know, kind of taking visual aesthetics from those games, but very much like we've fallen into this rut now, especially with this AAA situation that we're in right now, where everything is a Fortnite clone and everything is, you know, games as a service and everything like that. Bringing back some of the limitations, like gameplay wise, can be like, oh, this is like innovative now. You know what I mean? When everything is so stale. Do you have any thoughts on that, Marcus? Just as far as like your game design sensibilities and what you try to bring into your games?
I mean, I guess I have like one interesting anecdote to that.
Sure.
Like in my games, you know, there's always something that you can unlock or that you can get for, you know, collecting things, finding things, whatever. And that's just because, you know, that's how I remember it, right? Like back in the day, you could get like the hidden bonus level or hidden bonus character or whatnot. And I have comments from people who are like, oh, this is so cool that this comes back because I don't know a single game that still does this. And other people are like, wait, you can get stuff in the game for playing the game without a currency. It's just... It's really just interesting to see this,
like cheat codes or something like that, you know?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Cheat codes in Super Kiwi, and it's exactly that. It's like this is just an old concept, but it just feels super fresh apparently nowadays, and it's just.
Which is a really depressing state of affairs, but it is also correct. So,
yeah, absolutely. You know, we've got a list of some games here. I'm just going to list some of these out now because I've been showing some trailers for these, but I do want to talk about some of the other examples that we had on. A couple of these we've had the developers on our show before. I think some notable examples of this would be like Aero GPX. We had the developer of that game on our podcast. That's kind of an F-Zero X throwback.
There's quite a few F-Zero throwbacks, kind of like... God, what's the one? oh no, I can't remember it now, but there's one that's on Steam that I've been playing from a few years ago now.
Mm.
And it's so funny how many like F-Zero throwbacks there are.
Yeah.
And Nintendo's just sheer unwillingness for I think it might be spite at this point.
Yeah, who knows?
Making a new F-Zero.
Well, I don't know. There are more F-Zero games on Switch now, if you count like Nintendo Classics and everything, than there have ever been on any platform in the past. So hopefully that's leading up to something. But I feel like F-Zero likes and Wipeout likes are two distinct genres of indie games that you see, right? So
it's the Wipeout spiritual successor I'm thinking of.
Right. I know Beam NG, is that what it's called? Something NG? I don't know, something like that.
Something N like that. Yeah, it's great.
But a couple of these other ones, X Zodiac is very much a Star Fox for Super Nintendo like. You've got Arzette, Jewel of Faramore. That is a really interesting case because that is a game, that is kind of emulating those Zelda CDI Philips games that nobody played. Like everybody is familiar with those. Dude, okay, maybe you did, Marcus. You're raising your hand. But I did not have a Philips CDI. But it was almost like legendary. Yes. But it was like they were like legendarily bad. It's like we knew them because of their kind of they're infamous, these games, more than they were like actually famous. But this is a great example of a game that like took the aesthetic, took the idea of it, and then actually made it into like a good game. It copied everything except the quality of those original games, right? So Arzette, that was definitely an interesting one of these. A couple others I'll just list off quick, and we'll show trailers of these later. But Azaran, Islands of the Jinn, is very much an upcoming Ocarina of Time. I've been playing the demo of that, and I've been really enjoying that.
That was in the last Next Fest, and it's like I've been begging for like Nintendo to do just do another Ocarina, like give me an N64 era Zelda game. I love Breath of the Wild, love Tears of the Kingdom, but I also don't want to spend 100 fucking hours climbing around a mountain. Like give me a 25 hour self-contained thing where I can't climb up the walls, and so I can have some like normal dungeons again.
Right.
This is like I wouldn't actually be surprised if Nintendo did go after him, because I fucking like.
I doubt it. I think it's got enough of its own identity.
It does. No, it does. It does. It has like the kind of
thing, but
Middle Eastern kind of like Arabian sort of thing going.
Right. And I think that this was I actually reached out to Benji about to be on this episode. He was like, "Oh, I'm going to wait until the game's out to do podcasts."
Oh man, I messaged him after the demo came out, and I was just like, dude, like, because I'd been following him for at least a year or two before anyway.
Right.
Like, you're making this whole fucking thing on your own. Like, someone's doing like a Legend of Zelda game on their own. Like, it's just mad.
It's craziness. That one looks really cool. A couple others I'll list off real quick. Double Shake is very much a Klonoa style game. Pizza Tower is obviously kind of not only Pizza Tower, but also Anton Blast are both kind of Wario Land 4 throwbacks. We talked about Bug Fables. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk is very much a Jet Grind or Jet Set Radio, depending on where you grew up, throwback. And then Corn Kid 64, I think, is another game that I've always kind of put in the same bucket as like Super Kiwi 64 or like some of these other like collectathon style, very much made to look like it came out back in 1996 or something like that, right? Aesthetics like this. So I definitely wanted to give a shout out to some of these other games, but.
And there's so many more as well. Like, again, like Signalis, I think is one of like the finest survival horror games that manages to. What I'm finding really interesting is that you'll have these spiritual successors, and they'll take like two things and slap them together. So whether it's Crow Country doing Final Fantasy VII and Resident Evil, or whether it's Signalis doing, I guess, just kind of survival horror as a whole, but using like Metal Gear Solid style UI and UX aesthetics. And it's like, yeah, you can just kind of like take, because like the next thing that we're working on is kind of like we're taking this weird niche like PS1 hot air balloon game and basically like low poly Wind Waker and slapping that together. And you could just do that. And it's great. And I'm so excited to see what happens over the next 3, 4, 5 years with other these types of spiritual successors.
As a big time Kaze no Notam fan, I am actually pretty excited for whatever you have cooking. I've seen teases on your Blue Sky about that, and so that was one of the reasons that I wanted to hit you up about this topic, Mark. Man, you guys' names are too similar. I wanted to hit you up about this topic Mark.
Already a few times.
Yeah. One of you is us, and the other one is just blank. But anyway, I did want to talk a little bit more about some of this. And, obviously, we're not just seeing classic games from some of these earlier eras, having kind of game design sensibilities and graphic styles copied. I think that you just see this happen in modern indie games as well. I think when one of these like big indie hits really takes off on Steam, you start to see a lot of kind of you see kind of like fads in game design, right? Like, for instance, I think two of the most big examples I could think of recently was like Vampire Survivors. When that game came out, that spawned an entire genre of games of just like Vampire Survivor likes. I think one of my favorites is a game called Picayune Dreams, and that was very much a Vampire Survivor style game, but had its whole kind of own aesthetic that it did. It was very much like a cyberpunk sort of look, and it was sort of set in space, but it was like there were like 10 games that came out that were really similar to Vampire Survivors, and I don't think anybody ever really cared. Nobody was like mad about that. I never heard like the creator of Vampire Survivors being like pissed off that people were like copying that style. Another one that I can think of in recent memory was like Suika Game, right? Suika Game had a whole bunch of games come out soon after that took the basic concept of the kind of combining fruits into bigger things or whatever, but put their own spin on it and added their own kind of visual identity to it.
I think you're starting to see it with Balatro as well now. I feel like
that's right. Yeah, you're seeing a lot of Balatro style games.
There was a Billionaire, I think, which was like a pachinko machine style one, and then Clover Pit that just came out. Obviously, they are very much doing their own thing, but there are the elements of them that kind of take from there.
Right. Sure. I mean, I think, just, in kind of regards to this idea, I mean, we talked a little bit earlier in the episode about sort of wearing your inspiration on your sleeve, taking what works from other games and doing your own thing. Like, is this something like when it's other like indie creators, like, is this like, what do you guys feel about this? Does it feel derivative to you to make games like these? Or does it kind of feel like a natural evolution of a genre when you see this sort of stuff happen? Marcus, maybe we can start with you. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes. And I actually have a perfect example because I like it, first of all. Like I absolutely, I love that. I guess you could call it iteration, but just to see how that idea would be like if it goes through like someone else's mind, right? And someone else's skill set, even like there are obviously like also like a lot of copies that are in terms of quality are worse than the original, and that's also interesting to see. And back in I think 2011 or 12 or whatever, when the whole Xbox Live Indie Games thing was a thing, I made an indie game, and it had like this mini game, which was basically like a classic RPG, like a JRPG, and I called it micro RPG or something. It just had one screen. You just walk from dungeon to dungeon, and the dungeon was also just one screen, and then the game was done. And this idea got copied by other developers on this Xbox Live Indie thing for their game collections. So I could actually play variations and interpretations of my own idea. And that was the coolest shit ever because, they brought in like just tiny ideas that I didn't think of, which is just like, oh yeah, this is great. This is crazy. This just makes the whole game feel more, like epic. So I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. I feel like if anybody ever, because I'm a filmmaker, it's like if I saw anybody like take ideas from films that I had made, I'd be very honored, Right? But I know like certain people have different opinions on it, right? Like I also like when it comes to IP, like, and copyright law, like in general, I think that copyright law is kind of, a bit too draconian at this point. I think it's kind of the opposite of how it was originally sort of invented, right? But that notwithstanding, I think that pulling inspiration is like kind of a show of respect more than it is a show of like oh, I can't come up with an original idea, so I'm just going to use yours. But do you have a different opinion on this, Mark, or what do you think?
I mean,
about this?
there is the very slight cynical hat that I will put on. And to go back to Nirvana that I mentioned earlier.
Sure, yeah.
Coming out of Nirvana, you had Stone Temple Pilots and Silverchair and Bush. And in fairness, I actually quite like most of those bands. But, I think in the kind of ecosystem of video games, publishers are obviously looking for the next hit. And so when you see that Balatro sells 15 million copies or whatever it is, or Vampire Survivors sells umpteen million copies, as a publisher looking for your next hit, you are going to be like, hey, can we find the next of that? Which I don't knock them for. Like, you're a business, you're trying to make money. Of course you're going to do that. I think the amusing thing is, I would imagine most publishers, if they'd had Balatro at their door, at their feet, they'd have probably gone, what's this? Nah. And fair play to PlayStack for jumping on that and realizing what that could be. Yeah, look, there have been other games like Vampire Survivors before. Part of the charm of what makes Vampire Survivors what it is the kind of low indie jank of it.
Sure, totally.
The moment that you start really kind of polishing that, you're just sort of making a bullet hell shooter, and there's a dime a dozen of those. But Vampire Survivors is like, let's just kind of do a sort of campy, janky Castlevania thing with bullet hell. And that is kind of the charm of it. And a lot of it is that kind of sort of lightning in the bottle stuff, where you can try it and mimic something, but it's not quite. There was after Fall Guys came out, there was like Stumble Guys or something. That was mobile, I think, and that's one of the more, and you see it a lot with like the mobile industry, where there's so much more of a kind of disgusting kind of like, not predatory, but just a real blatant, like, we are going to take that thing, do it on mobile, and monetize the shit out of it. That is, it's kind of part and parcel for.
You're kind of right. Industry. That feels almost worse. I don't know. Maybe it's because they're mobile games, but it's like,
that is the worst.
You can kind of always tell when it's just like asset copying.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And like, you do get some of that in the kind of PC and console space, but it's much harder to like break through, because you're going to probably get called out. Like, the mobile gaming space is such a fascinating, weird little area. But like, even if you do have the cynical hat on that a publisher is looking for a game, that, like, there's still you as a developer need to have like the creativity and the talent and the ability to take that thing and then twist it into something that still feels like its own thing. And that in itself is like, that's still an original creation. And, I would never knock anyone for that. Again, my game is just fucking Cooler World with a Vaporwave skin, and I took the gravity switch from VVVVV. That is it, And
but that's a big change up. It changes the gameplay quite a bit.
It does. No, the gravity switch does, in fairness, change up the gameplay.
Like,
I would be a charlatan if I stood here and was like, no, this is its own thing. No, it is what it is. You know, like Toree Saturn has, obviously, you play that for 3 seconds, and you're like, oh yeah, I played the first like minute of Sonic Adventure. I know exactly what this wants to be, and that's cool. And it's
called out on the podcast. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I think that's a great point. When it comes to talking about Toree Saturn again, I think that correct me if I'm wrong, but you've had some of your Toree games involved in the Sonic fan game, or what's the kind of festival that they do?
Is Sage.
Yeah, Sage.
The Sonic Amateur Game Expo.
Yeah, you've had your games in that expo as well, right? And I think that is a great kind of, I think that's a fount of wonderful games that you obviously have a lot of like Sonic inspiration from a lot of the games that come out of that, but you also get like straight up those fan games that we're talking about earlier, right? And I think that, Sega, when it comes to, I think to their credit, when it comes to just straight up fan games and like games that say Sonic in the title, or say like, was it Triple Trouble Deluxe, the kind of that remake of the handheld game that didn't get a ton of love. Yeah, it was a Game Gear game originally, and the remake is incredible. I loved Triple Trouble Deluxe, and a lot of the Sonic fan games that come out of that, they have been very, very chill with their IP when it comes to monetizing and whatnot. I mean, obviously, you guys are selling these games for money. I think that's like where people start to get like a little bit more concerned. I think obviously these games aren't, it's not like they're making a new Kula World, or it's not like they're making, a Sonic Adventure game. And even if they were, I think both of your games are different enough to where it would never really come into problems. But is that something you keep in mind when you're making indie spiritual successors? Is like the original creators, are you ever worried about them trying to take legal action or being called out by the original creators of this game? Is that anything that kind of goes through your mind as you're getting into development? Marcus, let's start with you.
I mean, not really. Like like you already said, especially when it comes to Sega, they are very chill about stuff like this. And I mean, I literally, spoiler alert, I literally stole one of their musicians, right? So, and so far, no Sega ninjas at my door.
They don't have the same kind of ninjas that Nintendo does anymore.
Yeah. No, but I do feel that because I also went to like different kinds of schools and whatnot. I also kind of know where the like the line is, how far I could go without it being too much. And I mean, there was this one Toree game that I made for free that was basically the celebration thing for Sonic, and then we released that in a collection last year. And I was actually worried that some of the parts are maybe a bit too close, so we changed some bits, but overall, because even with the original, I just stayed in this line where it's like still okay,
right? And that gives it its own identity too. I mean, it makes you stand out from the crowd, I would think, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not really worried.
Yeah.
I think as well with like Sega, like I respect that they have a level of self-awareness about their inability to make a good 3D Sonic game. Sonic Frontiers, man, I could do an hour on that fucking thing alone.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, well, that's a spiritual successor to Breath of the Wild anyway.
It's one of my favorites as well because of how unhinged it is. Like,
right.
It just throws every idea at the wall, regardless of whether they work contextually or not, and I kind of respect that.
Yeah, that's true.
But like, I mean, on my side, I mean, I think one of the reasons that you are likely to, and again, not a legal expert, one of the reasons that I feel like you are likely to get sued for doing something that feels very close to another game is that the argument being you have taken, or you have prevented, we have a loss of sales because people got confused about our games and bought your game because it's so closely looks like or aligned to what our game is. And considering about 4 people owned Cooler World and most people played the demo, and it's a game from 1998, I would be shocked if I have contributed to any loss of sales for Studio Sweden AB, Swedish AB, whatever they were called. I think I'm okay. And honestly, the 3, copies that maybe like Axyz got instead of them, I'll pay them the 3 copies.
Sure.
If they ever chasing after me. But no, it's definitely like a legit question. I feel like it's probably more of a case for like the things you were talking about with like the more kind of modern indie reinterpretations of like a Vampire Survivors like or whatever.
Sure.
I feel like those lines could be blurred a little bit more, but like if you're trying to do like a spiritual successor to a thing no one has played since 1993, I feel it would be a big ask of those developers to try and turn that into something. Yeah. And also, like, how much fucking money do I have? Like, what are they going to get from me? Come on.
Yeah. Whenever anybody like sues somebody that is not like a mega corporation, I'm like, what are we doing here? This is performative. Yeah. Like, what are you going to get out of me, man? Like, no, I agree. I think we are seeing. It is interesting you brought up Frontiers because I do think that we're now in the point where both AAA games and indies are doing a lot of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom style games as well. A couple of the games we'll talk about at the end of this episode kind of take a lot from both of those games. But yeah, no, I just found this to be kind of an interesting topic, and this is something that I think about a lot, and I think that it's when it comes to visibility, I think having something, and I say this from I'm not a game developer, but from a consumer perspective and from somebody who's kind of within the industry and kind of this fourth estate of the games industry state that I find myself in as a podcast host. For me, when it comes to finding what I want to play and what really catches my eye when I'm scrolling on Twitter or on Blue Sky and I see something, I see a trailer or a GIF or a video or something that really makes me all of a sudden be interested in that game. I think having a nugget of something that I can latch onto, something that is recognizable to me, that then kind of opens the door for me to learn more about a game. I think that is, from my perspective, I think that has turned me on to so many games. And it's like, I'm in the mode now where when I see something that's interesting to me, I get a little rush. I get a little dopamine rush out of just opening the Steam page and hitting the wish list button. You know what I mean? It's like having like a nice fat wish list on my Steam account, like just feels so good, and it's like, and then it's also, you find as well that it's like, when you have like, especially a smaller platform like Blue Sky or whatever, it's like, that's how we know each other now, Mark, it's just being mutuals on Blue Sky, being interested in each other's work. And I think that it's like, when you have the indie scene like this, that is a bit smaller, it's a little bit more insular. Everybody sort of knows each other, or at least knows somebody who knows somebody else. I just think it's a really good way to kind of put your best foot forward, get your foot in the door, and have people sort of recognize your work. And I don't know, I just think it's a pattern that I've been seeing. And as somebody who's always kind of stolen openly the things that I like from a lot of other work, like the film that I made, Call Me Brother, we take whole cloth shots from like my favorite movies like Boogie Nights or all these other like inspirations. We took aesthetics from stuff like Napoleon Dynamite, and we just take the little bits of whatever we think works and sort of mash it all together. And I think that putting everything into a stew, sort of putting it up and putting your own personal stamp on it is really what makes it set it apart from everything else. Because I mean, you can take as many things as you want, but it all really comes down to the person that's making the game. So I think, with both of y'all's games, I see a lot of your personality within it, right? And I think that is just, I don't know if I'm trying to wrap up the topic here or not, but you guys have any kind of final thoughts on this before we end the main topic here?
You're absolutely spot on. And again, I think I mentioned it earlier that like, art, whatever form it takes, the art that you create is going to be in some way, in some capacity, inspired by the things that you have consumed. Like there isn't like some brand new kind of impressionist style of art that you're going to be taking from, the artists that were inspired by you. The music that I used to make was inspired by the likes of Nirvana, Deftones, Smashing Pumpkins, Arcade Fire, etc., because this was what I listened to and I wanted to make songs like that. And then that bleeds into like the video games as well. And I do think as well that you getting excited about the types of games that you're seeing that are triggering, maybe memories from games you played when you were younger. I mean, we're going to have to get into that anyway, because no one under the age of 23 is playing anything besides Fortnite and Roblox anyway. So we're all fucked. Like, we're all just playing to the same audience at this point.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Just my Minecraft and Fortnite from here on out. That's the only kinds of games.
Yeah.
Marcus, do you have any kind of last thoughts as we wrap up this main topic here?
Not really.
Yeah. I think we kind of covered quite a good bit.
Yeah,
I think
we did.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I think we don't do a ton of we haven't done a ton of episodes where, we have like multiple developers on talking about sort of the industry more as a whole. So this was a really fascinating talk. I'm really glad we were able to do this and have this sort of roundtable discussion. We should do a panel at a con or something like that. I think we would kill it.
Oh, that would be so cool. I so want to start stroking my ego and start doing talks and panels. Like I want to feel important. That's all I want out of
We
this.
need to do this again, but in a situation where we could all get COVID. That's what we need to do next time. I think that's going to do it for our main topic here on Indie Spiritual Successors. Listener, what do you think about this? If you have games that you think fit into this kind of genre of indies here, please drop them in the comments below or hit us up on social media. Let us know what you think about this topic and what kind of games you would like to see in the future, and how you think that the indie space fits into the overall games industry in this era of AAA slop. I'd love to hear from you guys as well. But I think with all that out of the way, we are going to move on to the next section of the show, which is the games we've been playing recently. So I've been playing a good bit of games recently, especially since I've been sick. I have been binging some shows as well, but mostly been playing some Mario Galaxy 2. I've been still jumping back in. That's been a really fun time. The re-release looks incredible in 4K on the Switch too, so I've been having a ton of fun playing that. And it's a great game to just jump in and do 1 or 2 stars like every once in a while, and I don't find myself sitting down and playing it for hours on end, but it's been a really fun thing to sort of play in between other things that I'm playing or reading for that matter. But one of the new games that I played, and I played through this whole game with my buddy, was Lego Voyagers. This is a new kind of co-op game. It's really similar to something like It Takes Two, or it's a game that's made to be played with 2 people all the way through. So me and Chris McKeever, a longtime guest of the show, we played through this game. Chris bought the game, and I got the Friends Pass. They did the thing where it's like only one person needs to buy the game for both of you to play it online. So I played this through on Switch too. This is a fun game. It's a very chill co-op game. It has really cool kind of vibes and aesthetics. I think it was published by Annapurna, so it's very
I
much
saw that. I was not expecting to be seeing Annapurna pop up as the publisher.
Yeah, for like a Lego game, right? Yeah, so it's a very unique Lego game. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't think Chris liked it as much as I did. There are definitely some parts that are a little frustrating. They don't hold your hand on how to do anything. You kind of just have to figure it out as you go. So that led to a little bit of frustration as we were playing through, but I think ultimately it was a pretty unique experience. And I think it goes on sale pretty often. I think it's like a $25 game. It's a short experience. I would recommend it though. And then
can you play it as a single player game, or is it?
It is co-op only. Yeah. Okay. So definitely, that's why they have the Friends Pass available, because it's like you can't really expect. You just don't get anything out of it if you play it by yourself.
It looks really nice.
No, I enjoyed it quite a bit. It had a really cool aesthetic. It struggles a little bit on the Switch too. I wish the graphics were a little bit better. It feels like it's maybe an Unreal 5 game or something. There's lots of graphical stuff that they just put all of it onto the Switch too, so that means it's a little bit fuzzy as you're playing the game through, but ultimately I had a really good time. A game that is not fuzzy at all, that I am completely addicted to right now, though, is Mars First Logistics. This game is so fun. I love this so much. This is not a David game at all. This is not the sort of game that I feel like I would normally be that into, but it is so much fun, and I can't put it down. It's very much a it's not Breath of the Wild. It's like the vehicle building in Tears of the Kingdom, if that was a full game, and it takes place on Mars. It's got this kind of beautiful cell shaded look to it, and you're building little Mars rovers and taking things from point A to point B on Mars. It's just a really funny game as well. It's you can fuck up a bunch or do some really, really janky shit in order to get the thing where you need it to go. And I've been really enjoying it. It's been a great game to play on my Steam Deck while I'm watching something on TV, and just sort of mindlessly driving from one part of the map to another, building roads and stuff like that. It's a really, really fun game with a really cute aesthetic. I've been enjoying this one quite a bit. Have any of you guys played Mars First Logistics?
You'll be shocked to know, considering what I'm working on at the moment. I've been taking many, many screenshots as inspiration in terms of the art direction. This thing is hitting a number of buttons that speak to my current sensibilities. I actually wanted to ask you, because as it's definitely like that kind of like Kerbal Space Program construction type style sort of thing. It's like how does it? You say you're playing on Steam Deck. How does the kind of UI UX in terms of like actually constructing stuff? How intuitive is that?
It's not bad. I mean, it's probably easier to do with a mouse. And I have like plugged my Steam Deck into my monitor and used a USB mouse or a Bluetooth mouse, on that as well. But I think handheld it plays pretty much just fine. They streamlined it really well. The game also is stunning. I think it runs at like a solid 90 FPS on my Steam. I think it's a 400 megabyte game as well, which is
there is an alternative direction that we took in the early 2000s where we looked at Wind Waker and went, this is actually the path forward. This is the way we're meant to
this is next gen. Yeah,
we didn't wholesale reject this visual style because we're idiots.
Yeah. But anyway, I really am enjoying that. Another game that kind of has a very similar aesthetic actually is the last game I've been playing this week, and I just started this one last night, so I'm not too far into it, but it's called Wheel World. This is by Messhoff Games. They're the guys who made Nidhogg and Nidhogg 2, the kind of fencing multiplayer games, which I love those games. This is a very, very different
This is not the follow-up you was expecting.
No. This is they're taking a huge swing here. This is also an Annapurna published game, and this came out I think a couple months ago at this point.
About 2 months ago.
Yeah. And so this is it's kind of a Breath of the Wild-ish open world game, but where you are riding a bike the whole time and you get into races and you can upgrade your bike and you unlock shrines and stuff that open different parts of the map. This is actually a really, really fun game with, again, an aesthetic that looks pretty similar to Mars First Logistics. So I guess this is just the kind of game I play now, are games that look like this. But I've been really enjoying Wheel World and I can't wait to play more of it. The racing feels really fun and just the movement in general has a satisfying movement to it.
It's really nice to like kind of get into a bit of a Zen flow like state and just like pick a path and just go cycling. No like ambition to hit an objective or whatnot, but just to kind of like vibe with it. I think it actually does a really nice job with that.
I was a big fan of like Lonely Mountains Downhill as well. Like those kind of like bike games are just so fun to me. Yeah.
I wish that it had a little bit more variety in terms of the types of quests that you're doing, because it does kind of ultimately come down to just doing various types of races. It might be quite tricky to mix up the types of quests because you are cycling on a bike the whole time. So the parts of it that I did end up enjoying the most were just like you just picking a path and just kind of vibing to like, it's a really beautiful kind of slight, it's not quite the kind of like solid color tones of like a cell shaded style game. It's a little bit more kind of pastels, a little bit more kind of like mixtures into like kind of gradients with the color shading. But yeah, it's lovely.
Great
I actually need
to
get back into that at some point.
Yeah. What about you, Mark? What have you been playing this week?
I'm about 45 hours into Silksong at this point, and Yahtzee, Zero Punctuation or whatever, the kind of new version of the second wind version of that, he had a really interesting video where he was like, I've never really had a game before where I was playing it and I had the kind of like, aha, this is brilliant, this is just right, this is now a 10 out of 10 game, and also a fuck this game sucks, I'm done with this game. Like, and he's not wrong, because there were a couple of different moments where it was like, right, they've got it. This is the Hollow Knight, because I adore Hollow Knight. For me, it is one of the best Metroidvanias ever. I was taking Silksong for what it was and not like getting too kind of wrapped up in the hype about it. But it does have a couple of things. It has like a particular like gank boss section where you have 10 rounds of these kind of like mini boss fights, or just like kind of enemies that you encounter, and you basically do the loop of it twice. So instead of doing like 4 gank kind of enemy fights, then like the mini boss, you do all of that and then you do it all again, and then it's twice as hard. And it's just like there's a lack of creativity with this here, you know, like you're doing it to be difficult for the sake of being difficult. And look, I grew up playing difficult games. I can beat the original Mega Man, all right? Like that game fucking is brutal to try and play in 2025. But I'm getting through different points of Silksong, and I'm fine with like there's like a 10-minute journey between that bench and that boss to go and fight it, and you get there and you're barely unscathed, and some of the boss fights in general, and like some of the very kind of like dickish moves they do with like benches not actually being benches, or you have to go fix the bench and then it kills you first. And all of that stuff I'm enjoying, because it makes the world feel antagonistic and relentless throughout, almost like oppressive in a way that Hollow Knight feels more of just this kind of exploratory adventure with elements of the oppressiveness of like deepness and whatnot. But it has got to a point where it's just like, this is excessive in terms of, I admire how much they have not compromised in terms of what they wanted to do. And I mean, you know, Team Cherry are on fuck you money at this point, where they can do whatever they want. And if they weren't before Silksong, they definitely are after Silksong. But it's just a bit too much. Like every now and again, I want to sit down on that bench and just chill out for 5 minutes and just breathe. And it just doesn't give you that at all. And also like, some of the biomes are interesting, but one of the things that I love about Hollow Knight is that each biome really has its own like character to it, and I can see them and I can hear them in my head, and the way that like they would bleed one biome into the next, and you see like kind of a mishmash of like one specific area where they're taking environmental design from both of them, putting them together. Some of the biomes, or quite a few of the biomes in Silksong, don't quite have that level of like defined character to them. They just don't quite speak to me in the same way. So it's still an excellent game, but I also don't know if I'm going to finish it. And that's the thing that surprises me the most, because again, I'm like 45 hours in, and I know that Act 3 is even more fucking egregious in terms of its like difficulty, and I'm just like, I don't know if I can be bothered at this point.
I don't think it's for me ultimately, but yeah, I'm happy for the Silksong fans.
It's intense.
But what about this other game you've been playing?
Oh yeah, so or however it's pronounced, is the new game by the developer of Axyz, which is one of my favorite games from, I can't remember if it's 2021 or 2022. This really, Axyz is this just wonderful like puzzle platformer, super minimalistic in terms of design, monochromatic in terms of its visual palette, and it, like, my favorite types of puzzle games are where you can take like one puzzle mechanic and you basically just iterate on that for 2 hours, and then boom, you're done. Portal is the perfect example of that. And Axyz does that, and then does this as well. You play as like a little caterpillar, and you have a bomb. And the way that you interact with that bomb is that if you explode next to it, it will propel you in that direction. And you, over the course of the 3 or 4 hours I've been playing now, have to use that in so many ways that at first you just think, oh, I just let it propel me in that direction and that's it. But the amount of ways that the developer finds like new ways to kind of like spin on that idea, it's astonishing. And then at some point you get a second bomb as well, and now like we're really like you have one bomb that's on top of you, and then you have one bomb below you, and then you use that to find a way. And it does a thing where you'll have like 3 individual screens, and you have like the basic version of that puzzle, and then you have like the next kind of version of the puzzle where like maybe you have these blocks that when you blow the block up, the platform disappears for a few seconds and there are spikes underneath. So you have to find a way to get across or like blow those blocks up at a certain point without falling. And then it'll do the third version of that where there's like half that platform there and then the rest of it spikes. And so like you're doing you're solving the puzzle, but then that puzzle is being like multiplied, and then you have to figure out
very like natural
the other angle of how to. It's just it's a masterclass in puzzle design and problem solving, and every time that I solve it, I feel like a genius. And it's just
as you should. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pick this one up.
And I think it's like £7 at the moment. I know it's 20% discount.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I'll get that before the sale ends. But
and on Steam Deck, it's just perfect.
Oh, I'm sure. Marcus, what about you? Have you been playing anything cool recently?
I mean, I've been finally today digging into. It's a bit of a long name. It's called Axyz versus Trials in the Sky Alternative Saga, which is a Axyz is this JRPG, this action JRPG series, and this game was like a Smash Brothers of that from back in the PSP days, and they re-released it now on Steam. It's a lot of fun. But what I've been playing the most is actually Axyz, which I wanted to play for forever, and for some reason never did. And then just like I think last week at some point, I think it was in the sale still, like this autumn sale or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I just gonna get it again. I'm pretty sure I have it somewhere, like a Steam code, because I bought these controllers for it. Like these Philips.
Oh, you got the recreated controller?
Yes, I actually played with that for the whole experience, and it's. Yeah, I can recommend it, but it's very fun.
Yeah, very novelty, I suppose.
Yeah, but the game itself is just like, it's insane how much charm and passion and love this game has. I got into this, expecting to play this meme game to just have like maybe an evening or two of fun, and then I actually got invested in these silly. Non-central YouTube poop character somehow. And it's just, this is what I've been saying about the Philips CDI, the Philips CDI Zelda games. They are not bad. They are just very unpolished, very unfinished, and no people with a lot of game design knowledge were working on them, because that's the whole point about that we were talking earlier about the whole spiritual successor, where you take a bad game and turn it into what it could have been, like in a better version. And I love it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually finishing it like tomorrow or sometime this week.
Yeah, I think I also have this game. I think I got it in like a Humble Bundle and then never actually played it. So I've got to definitely try this out. Hearing the glowing review from you is definitely
definitely. But use a Xbox controller.
I'm not going to pick up the CDI controller. I'm sorry. No offense to the RZ devs. But, all right. Well, I think that is going to do it here then for this episode. Thank you, Mark and Marcus, both for coming on. It was such a delight to talk to both of you. We got to do this again sometime. This was a great panel. Yes, thank you very much to MilkyWay.co for doing our website. Thank you to Corduroy for doing our music. Thanks to all of our patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to find me online, I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Marcus? Where can people find you online?
Ideally on YouTube, because that's where you get the whole, if you're interested in my games, that's where you get the condensed, perfected version of everything. Okay, and
what's your handle on YouTube?
Siactro, just enter it in the search bar and
very good.
Pop up.
Yeah, and what about you, Mark? Where can people find you online?
I am on Blue Sky. Search for Lithium Project, and you'll find me on there. With a combination of kind of updates on what I'm working on and just my general inane ramblings on a day-to-day basis. Trying to make it like it still feels like it's Twitter in 2013 before the Nazis took over.
I'm enjoying Blue Sky so far. I think it's a nice platform, and I've definitely been able to make some good connections on there. So it's been really nice to talk to both of you. And make sure that you check out both Toree Saturn and Axyz. We'll have links to both of the recent games from both of these developers in the description of this episode. Make sure you check those out. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Blue Sky and Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We have a website, switchheadz.com. And then, like we said before, we have a Discord, a Facebook group, and a Patreon. If you could chuck in a couple bucks over on the Patreon, we'd really appreciate that. But other than that, please join us over on the Discord. We have such a great community over there of like-minded nerds that break apart the episodes every week as we do them, and also tons of great channels and discussion in there, and a thriving politics channel in today's fucked up world. So if that interests you, join us over there on the Discord. And then if you could, please like and subscribe over on our YouTube, as we said before. Leave a review for us on Spotify and Apple, and share the show with a friend. We'd appreciate that. That's going to do it for this episode. Really great time. We're going to be back next week, probably to talk about Pokemon Legends ZA. We'll see if I get that game. But other than that, you guys know the drill. Be safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Play indie games. Fuck ice. We love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.